The audio file starts with laughter, a bright, brittle sound ricocheting around a chandeliered ballroom. There are glasses clinking, chairs scraping, a microphone popping on. Over the hum, a man's voice rings out, practiced and amused. If she translates, I'll give her mother my job. A beat, more laughter, then a softer voice. A woman, registers on the waveform, steady and low. I can translate. According to the time code stamped at the bottom, this was 10:12 a.m. and Ballroom C, Level 3 of the Halberd Hotel. 4 hours later, there would be HR emails, a board call, a closed-door meeting. 48 hours after that, an apology statement posted in corporate font, widely shared. A week later, a video clip subtitled by volunteers with millions of views. Right now, though, there is only the recording, the rustle of suits, and a faint hiss from the espresso machine in the adjacent lounge. The man laughs again, shorter this time. He says, "Be my guest." I've listened to the recording too many times to count. I've read the incident report drafted by security, the internal memo from the legal department, and the text messages between staffers that morning. What I know is what they saw, said, and saved. When I called the housekeeper, whose daughter had spoken up, she told me her hands were still trembling when she thinks of it. Every time I close my eyes, she said, I see his face, like he couldn't believe a mouth like mine could raise a daughter like her. Before we go further, here is what the hotel surveillance cameras captured. A young woman, early 20s, hair pulled into a protective style and tied with a red scarf beneath a gray beanie, steps through the service doors into the ballroom corridor, carrying a brown paper bag with careful fingers. She walks like someone who has been told to not be in the way. Her hoodie has a university crest on it, faded along the edge, public college, commuter campus, local. She hesitates at the staff entrance, peeks in and shifts sideways as two catering staff roll past with a tray of croissants. The badge at her belt reads Visitor. The bag in her hand says Tadeo's Cuban Bakery, grease darkening the bottom. The man at the microphone, the one who will later be named in emails and headlines, is turned away from the camera, addressing a small cluster of executives near a projector screen that shows a paused slide. Urban Freight Future, Strategic Partnerships. He is tall, mid-50s, close-cropped silver hair, navy suit. You can see the confidence even from behind, one hand in his pocket, the other holding the microphone lightly. His name, according to the event program and the registration list, is Victor Harlan, founder and chairman of Harlan Logistics. He grew up in Ohio, according to his company bio, and made his first million before 30. He loves stories about nights sleeping in his car, about risk, about hustle. People who work for him tell a more layered story. In the second row, on the right, a woman sits with her back straight, no fidgeting. She wears a light gray suit. Her hair is pulled neatly into a bun. There's a lapel pin, a stylized green leaf. To her left, a man leans forward, flips through a folder fat with diagrams and maps. Their name tags angled toward the camera for a brief second as they turn to whisper, read Lin X, and Zhao M. The event schedule calls them representatives of Zhenhua New Mobility, a mid-sized Chinese firm specializing in last-mile electric vehicle fleets. There is supposed to be a translator. That translator, as verified by an email thread with the subject, urgent interpreter delay, flat tire on I-95, is late. When the young woman, the one with the bakery bag, steps quietly into the back of the ballroom, she stands beside a beige pillar by the water station, next to a cardboard box of stir sticks and sugar packets. She doesn't set the bag down. She's meant to hand it to someone, but the room is full of heat and the buzz of men in navy suits. The housekeeping staff she came to find, her mother, has been pulled to another floor to steam-press tablecloths at the last minute, according to a text message the mother sent at 10:09 a.m. Baby, give it to Sarah at the bar. Tell her it's for Monica. She'll get it to me. Are you okay? You can wait in the lobby. The reply bubble shows as typed but unsent. 2 minutes later, Victor jokes into the microphone about how difficult it is to get good help. Laughter. He adds a line about elevators that never come and translators who miss alarms. He taps the face of the watch under his cuff and calls the interpreter our missing bridge. Some in the audience smile, some check their phones. A staffer with a radio near her shoulder looks toward the back doors and murmurs, "We've called her twice." Then Victor says, more softly, unless someone here speaks Mandarin. He turns his head toward the Chinese guests, gives a comical shrug, the international sign for, "What can you do?" The woman in gray, Lin, folds her hands and says something to the man beside her. Her mouth shapes around a word that the camera lip readers later flagged. Zunzhong, respect. The young woman with the bakery bag hears it. She doesn't speak, not yet. At 10:12, an executive in the third row, a man with an overloud laugh, glances toward the back and says in a tone that could be read as convivial, or not, "Ask the cleaning crew. Maybe they know." A ripple of chuckles. The microphone picks up Victor's reply. "If she translates, I'll give her mother my job." The room laughs. It's not uniform, it's messy. Some don't, some wince. One of the caterers standing along the wall stares at the floor. The young woman in the hoodie looks at the box of stir sticks like it could swallow her. The audio captures the next line clearly, because it's spoken close to the recorder on the podium. A soft voice, steady. I can translate. What follows, according to witnesses seated within 10 feet, was a pause. A thin slice of silence that you could feel, like a room deciding whether it had heard what it heard. Victor's head turns. The guests turn. In the far corner, the hotel event manager looks up from her tablet. The young woman is 6 feet from the door. She wears jeans, scuffed sneakers, and carries the brown paper bag close to her stomach. She has a soft southern accent when she says, a notch louder, I can translate. For them. I met her 2 weeks later at a round metal table in a public library with a flickering fluorescent light. She told me she almost didn't say it. It was like those dreams where you see something happening and your body doesn't move, she said. But then, I thought, he said my mother. He made my mother a joke. She looked down at her hands. They are small, with neatly filed nails. I don't like being dared. Her name is Nia. She is 21, a senior at the State University. She studies international relations and linguistics. She manages a full course load with a work-study job in the campus admissions office. She visits her mother on the late shift when she can. The scarf under her beanie at the hotel that day was red because her mother likes red. What I know from the accounts is that Victor smiled, a noncommittal, amused line. He said when he approached her with the microphone, "This ought to be fun. Transitional humor, crowd management." Nia nodded back. She pushed the bakery bag under the water table and stepped forward. She was wearing the visitor pass a few inches higher on her belt than where most people wear them because she didn't like it swinging. The woman in gray, Lynn, looked at Nia with the kind of attention that stopped short of hope and stopped short of suspicion. The man, Zhao, looked down at his notes and then up again, polite. Nia swallowed, and in a tone low enough not to be a performance, said in Mandarin, 我们需要翻译吗? 我可以帮助. Do we need an interpreter? I can help. According to those who were close enough to hear, Lynn's eyebrows lifted, not quite a smile. She replied, also soft, 你会说普通话吗? Do you speak Mandarin? Nia answered, 会一点点，但是我会尽力而为. A little, but I'll do my best. There is an assumption people make that language is a switch. Off or on, you either speak it or you don't. Anyone who has ever been lost in a market with a dictionary knows that is not how it works. Language is all context and posture and the willingness to be patient with yourself. Nia had not spoken Mandarin in any formal capacity outside of class since she finished a summer program when she was 19. She had never interpreted in a business setting. It wasn't like I thought I could do everything, she told me. I just knew I could help them be heard. According to the notes scribbled by a junior analyst in the second row, later photographed and shared with me, the morning's session was supposed to open with a welcome, a review of city freight regulations, and then remarks by Ms. Lin and Mr. Zhao about their pilot project. But the missing translator had turned the agenda into a display, the hosts performing openness while the guests waited for actual engagement. There is a way to talk about inclusion that is a velvet rope. Nia stepped up to the aisle. Victor held the microphone toward her. I said, if you can translate, your mother can have my job, he repeated with a chuckle, as if to tie a bow around what was obviously a joke. Let's see what you can do. It landed differently now. Someone coughed. Nia kept her eyes on Lin and Zhao. She spoke to Lin in Mandarin. She looked at Victor in the room and said in English, carefully, Ms. Lin and Mr. Zhao will introduce their company and project. They came to listen first. They have prepared some questions about fleet permits. She did not offer to translate jokes. She angled the microphone slightly away from herself when she wasn't speaking. She spoke into that room like it was a classroom, and the person who needed to hear her was in the last row. There is a rhythm to interpretation that is half about words and half about hands. Nia's left hand was still, and her right hand drew small circles in the air when she searched for a phrase. When she paused to check a word, she did it openly, out loud, clarifying with Lin. 这个字是, she said once, eyes to the ceiling, and Lin supplied it, 车辆交流, fleet dispatching. Nia nodded, repeated it with care, rolled it in English smoothly afterward, and once, when she realized the word Victor had used, disruption, didn't match the tone that Zhao had used, more like innovation with caution, she paused and fixed it. He doesn't mean break the system, she said, looking at Lin and Zhao. He means change patterns that are inefficient. Lin looked relieved in a way you can only see if you know what relief looks like behind a composed face. People in the room stopped looking at their phones. The laughers quieted. It is a thing to watch someone perform a skill that saves the room from itself. You see a shape you didn't realize had been missing. The first 10 minutes passed in real conversation. Nia checked for comprehension. She signaled for the staffer to dim the overhead lights slightly because the projector was washing out the slides, and because Ms. Lin had squinted at the glare. She asked a clarifying question that, according to the later email from Zhenhua's office, demonstrated consideration for our priorities. It's not just language. It's hospitality. Not hotels, but the real kind. We see you, we will make room. Victor adjusted quickly. That is one thing people said about him repeatedly. He can keep a room. He smiled. He turned his jokes down and his eyebrows up and said things like, "That's absolutely something we can explore." He made a note to send someone to get coffee for the front row, which he did not drink, as confirmed by the saucer captured in a photograph, untouched. He did not repeat the joke about the mother again. He said at one point, "Who are you?" He meant it lightly. Nia responded only with Nia. She didn't offer a last name. In the recordings, there's a moment when Ms. Lin turns to Nia and says, in Mandarin too quickly for anyone without practice to catch all of it, "Ni bu zhi shifan yi, ni zai chao shangmian palai pao chu." You're not just translating, you're running back and forth across the bridge. Nia nods, breathes out a small laugh, and you can hear someone in the second row inhale, the sound people make when they realize they have underestimated someone and want to rearrange their face accordingly. The session ends without incident. That is to say, the incident is buried under composure and soft applause. The guests leave with their folders. Lin shakes Victor's hand and says, in English, accented but clear, "Thank you." She smiles toward Nia, and according to Nia's recollection, says not much else because words can cheapen what was plain. The recording stops. Everything that matters spreads after a room like this. In the hallway, a caterer named Jay whispers to Nia, "That was crazy." At the bar, Sarah, the bartender, slides the bakery bag back to Nia and says, "Monica will get it later. She's on 5. Are you okay?" Nia nods, breathes, texts her mother, "All good. Left food with Sarah. Love you." She does not mention what happened. Not yet. She goes down the service elevator and waits in the stall of the ground floor restroom longer than necessary until her heartbeat slows enough to feel like it belongs to her again. Upstairs, in the hallway outside Ballroom C, 2 sales managers talk in low voices. One of them says, "How fluent do you think she is?" The other says, "Fluent enough to save his ass." They laugh, the quiet kind, not cruel. In the event manager's office, she writes in the job log, 10/12/10/58, guest's daughter assisted with language facilitation, no incidents. No incidents, as if the room had not been a story knotted under the surface. She does not mention the remark. She will, later, in a private text. "You won't believe what Harlan said." At 11:15 a.m., there is a break. Victor walks toward the service corridor to make a call. The audio is not available there. The CCTV shows him catching up with Nia by the vending machines near the loading dock. He leans a shoulder against the wall, smile on. He says something that reads as origami cordiality. Nia nods, listens. According to her account, he thanked her. He asked where she learned Mandarin. She said, "School and listening." He asked if she was looking for work. She said, "I have class." He laughed, offered a business card, the glossy kind with embossed lettering. She took it, glanced, and slipped it into the pocket of her hoodie. He said, "Tell your mother I'm sorry if I sounded like I was making light." She said, "You were." He went still for a beat, then laughed again. He said, "You were great." She said, "Thank you." We know this because Nia told me, and because a maintenance worker sweeping that hallway, Omar, told me he heard parts of it. He didn't hear the apology. He did hear the thanks. He said Nia looked like she wanted to disappear. He said Victor looked like he wanted to be seen doing the right thing. "He's a showman," Omar said. "He's not all bad, but that don't make what he said less." By 1 p.m., the story had already started to trickle. A line here, a line there. In a group chat for hotel staff, Did you hear about Harlan talking about Monica's daughter? In a text from the event coordinator to a friend at a rival hotel, a guest's kid just saved an entire pitch. He laughed at her first. In a post in a private Facebook group for students of the university's Asian Studies department, someone's friend just translated at a fancy event at Halberd. Anyone know? None include audio. No one has the full quote. This is how gossip preserves itself until facts arrive to pin it into shape. The problem for the hotel and for Harlan Logistics is that facts arrive quickly now and carry better than ever. The junior analyst in the second row who scribbled notes had also propped his phone against the water glass and recorded the session in case he missed numbers. He didn't intend to capture anything else. When he listened back, looking for a decimal place, he heard the early laughter. He clipped the 15 seconds around the remark and sent it to his sister, who is a journalist at a small city paper, with the text, "This is the guy they keep saying is the future of logistics. What a jerk." She didn't post it. She asked for context. He promised to ask around. By 3 p.m., an HR staffer named Annette forwarded an email to her boss. Subject: Incident in Ballroom C, possible complaint, and the body of the text was measured. There was a verbal remark made by a guest speaker referencing a housekeeping employee's family member. It was heard by several staff and guests. Housekeeping employee is Monica Green. Employee ID. Her daughter, visitor, provided language assistance. I recommend we check security footage and gather statements in case of external inquiry. Attached was a screenshot of a text thread from a server. He said if she translates, he'll give her mother his job. By 6 p.m., Naya was at home at the small 2-bedroom apartment she shares with her mother and her younger brother on the 4th floor of a brick building with a blue mailbox out front. She had her laptop open, a homework tab about ASEAN trade agreements glowing on the screen, untouched. She stirred chicken in a pan. Her brother Malik asked her if she could help him with algebra. She said she could, later. Monica walked in at 8:20 p.m., shoulders tight, the smell of industrial lemon clinging to the edge of her hair. She set down her bag gently. She sat in the kitchen chair and took off her shoes one by one. Nia set a plate in front of her. They looked at each other. Monica's eyes asked the question. Nia said, "I did a thing." Monica said, I heard. They didn't want the moment to be about Victor. They made it about each other. Monica reached across and squeezed Nia's hand. "I'm proud of you," she said. Nia said, "I'm sorry he said what he said." Monica said, "He's not the last man who will say something like that, but he might remember this day." She laughed a little, the kind of laugh that is a release valve. "Maybe he'll even keep his promise." Nia rolled her eyes. "Please, he didn't mean it." "I know," Monica said, "but it's useful to say out loud what people mean, so it can't hide." The next morning, the junior analyst's sister called me. She didn't give me the clip. She asked if I wanted to hear what her brother had told her. She told me what he had seen and felt in the room. She told me the name Monica. She told me a housekeeper's daughter had spoken Mandarin with grace and steadied a whole day that would have otherwise been a public embarrassment. She said, "Wading, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but this is a pattern, isn't it? These rooms, these comments. People think it's small, and it sits there like mold." She said, "I can introduce you to my brother, and to the bartender, and to the event manager, if she feels safe." I said yes. By noon, I had 3 recorded interviews and a copy of the hotel's email. I had requested a comment from Harlan Logistics. "We've received reports of a remark made by Mr. Harlan. Could you confirm and provide context? Were any steps taken?" I had also requested comment from the hotel. "Was there an incident? What is your policy regarding conduct towards staff?" At 2 p.m., a reply arrived from Harlan Logistics' PR firm. "Our client values diversity and inclusion and regrets any remark that could be construed otherwise. He is grateful to the young woman who assisted yesterday and intends to reach out directly." The hotel did not reply until the next day with a general statement about their commitment to a respectful workplace for all team members. Some stories curdle. Some stories gather around their center and refuse to be dislodged. At 5 p.m., someone, the junior analyst, it turned out later, after his sister convinced him to, posted the audio clip in a private Slack with a caption that said, "Tone matters." Someone else recorded it on their phone and posted a 14-second video on a social platform with captions, "Millionaire at fancy hotel laughs. If she translates, I'll give her mother my job." Black girl translates. Silence. The clip cut off before the translating started. People filled in what they wanted to believe. Comments piled up fast, dangerous in their speed. Some said it was no big deal. Some said it was everything. Nia did not plan to be the center of anything. Her day was scheduled with test prep and an afternoon shift at the admissions desk, but her friend Tasha texted her a link with 10 exclamation points and a "Is this you?" Nia watched the clip with the sound low. She stared at herself at the back of the room, a tiny figure with a bag. She watched the comment wave across the screen. She closed the tab and breathed into her palms. She said out loud to the empty kitchen, "Like and subscribe for more stories that challenge prejudice and celebrate courage." It was a joke to herself, to cut the tension, because she had seen enough YouTube videos with their closing moments. It helped more than it should have. At 7:30 p.m., there was a knock on their door, slow, polite. Monica opened it less than an inch and looked through the crack, because this is a city where you give your privacy respect it didn't get from the landlords. On the other side was a woman in a dark coat with a leather folder. She introduced herself as Danielle, from Client Relations at Harlan Logistics. She had a business card, she had a practiced smile. She said, "Mr. Harlan wanted to thank you both personally." Monica did not open the door further immediately. She said, "You came into our home after he said he would give me his job for a laugh?" Danielle blinked. "I understand this is sensitive." Nia came to the door. Monica stepped aside. They let her in because refusing her would not erase the day. Danielle sat on the couch, perched as if ready to leave. She said a lot of words that folded around the same thing, apology. She did not use the word racist. She did not use the word class. She said unfortunate. She said misunderstood. She said tone. She said humor that did not land. She slid a letter from her folder and placed it on the coffee table. It had the Harlan letterhead. It said, "Thank you for your assistance. Please accept the enclosed as a token of our appreciation." The enclosed was a check for $2,000. Monica looked at it like it was a riddle. Nia looked at it like it had teeth. "We didn't ask for money," Nia said. Danielle nodded. Mr. Harlan wanted to demonstrate his gratitude. Monica said, "He could demonstrate it by telling the truth." Danielle said, "He regrets how it sounded." Monica said, "It sounded like what it was." Danielle did not push. She nodded. She collected her bag. She stood. At the door, she said, "We're also extending an internship opportunity to you, Nia, paid." She held out another letter. It offered a summer internship in the corporate office with a line about pathways to full-time employment. It was not nothing. It was not everything. Nia took it. She did not say yes. Danielle left. By morning, the clip had spiraled. It had been subtitled by someone who had been in the room who added a reading of the lips. It had been reposted by an account that curates moments of everyday courage. It had been duetted by a comedian who pretended to be Victor and said in a parodic voice, "I'm going to give away my job," and then looked in an empty closet. The internet is talented at satire, when pain is the premise. I reached Victor by phone on the third day. He was in an airport lounge. I could hear the smooth white noise of air conditioning. He took a breath and said, "I regret the remark. I have a tendency to use humor to diffuse tension. It's not an excuse. I thanked the young woman. She was impressive." He said the word impressive like it was currency. I asked what he would do to repair it. He said, "What do you suggest?" I said, "Ask her and her mother." He said, We've reached out. I asked if he would repeat his words publicly. He said, we are drafting something. There is an email chain between the hotel's general manager and the corporate communications team that I obtained. In it, someone suggests, limiting Zika comment, downplay, praise our inclusive environment. Someone else responds, "We should prepare for staff statements." They heard it. Then someone with fewer commas writes, "If audio spreads, we'll need a stance." Someone else writes, "Do not concede to demands for public apology and lobby. Bad optics." Someone else writes, "Consider a staff gratitude feature highlighting Monica, housekeeping excellence." The thread slumps under its own weight. Meanwhile, in a cramped kitchen where a child does algebra and a pot on the stove rattles, a mother and daughter talk. Monica says, "You don't have to be in a video." Nia says, "I don't want to be." Monica says, "We could make a statement." Nia says, "We don't owe them free labor." Monica says, "It's not about them. It's about other people like us. They should know they can speak and not be small." Nia says nothing for a moment. Then she says, "Okay." The video Nia posts is short. She records it at the kitchen table, in natural afternoon light. She wears a plain t-shirt. She looks into the camera and says, My name is Nia. I'm the person in the video. My mother's name is Monica. She cleans your rooms and irons your tablecloths. I spoke Mandarin because someone needed to hear what someone else was saying. I don't want Mr. Harlan's job. I want my mother's work to be respected. I want rooms like that to be made for people like Ms. Lin and Mr. Zhao without them being the butt of a joke. That's all. She breathes, then adds, because she is still young and because she knows the rhythm. Like and subscribe for more stories that challenge prejudice and celebrate courage. She smiles at the absurdity, small, but she leaves it in. It changes the feeling. It reminds viewers that this is a story about people, not villains. The comments fill with stories. Someone writes, "My mom was a janitor at a convention center. When she spoke up, they looked surprised, like brooms don't raise poets." Someone else writes, "I'm Chinese American. Thank you for catching his tone and adjusting. That's the work." Someone else writes, "I'm a white guy who laughed once at the wrong thing. I'm sorry." The internet works weird redemption sometimes, but the core is that people recognize something real. A week later, the board of Harlan Logistics meets in a sterile room with a long table. The glass walls are partially frosted. A ficus stands in one corner in a pot that costs too much. Victor sits at the head. The agenda lists Item 4, External Relations Incident Review. A lawyer speaks in precise phrases. "We recommend a formal apology. We recommend training." Victor nods. He signs a statement that says, "I made a remark that reflected a blind spot. I apologize to Ms. Monica Green, a professional whose work deserves respect, and to her daughter Nia, whose skill bridged a gap I created with my own behavior. I commit to learning." It is not poetry, but it is more than nothing. He posts it. Monica prints the statement and tapes it inside her locker at the hotel. She stares at it on her break. It doesn't heal. It doesn't have to. It marks a point on a line. In a parallel universe, this story would elide Ms. Lin and Mr. Zhao, but we live in this one, and they matter. They send an email to Nia through her university department that reads, "Your assistance was invaluable. If you were in Shenzhen, we would hire you." It includes a line, "Respect is the foundation of business." It includes a photo, 4 of them at lunch after the meeting, somewhere with a round table and a rotating tray, smiling lightly. Victor is not in the picture. There is also an internal shift. According to a memo shared with me by a hotel union representative, staff demand a meeting. They gather in the employee cafeteria where fluorescent light hums and the chicken today is overdone. Someone says, "We are not props in other people's shows." Someone else says, "When we ask for fair scheduling, they say budget. When a rich man laughs at us, they send flowers." The general manager listens. He says, "You're right." He announces increased anti-bias training. He announces an anonymous reporting line. He announces a pay review. Some of it will happen, some of it won't, but the people in the room know each other's names now. I met Victor once more. He asked me not to write him like a monster. I told him I don't write fiction. He said, "You're a storyteller." I said, "I am a reporter." He laughed, less surely this time. He said, when I said that thing, I didn't think about this outcome. I thought we'd all chuckle and move on." I said, "You did chuckle. You did move on. She didn't." He nodded. He looked out the window of his office at the skyline, at cranes moving steel, at trucks threading highways. He said, "She speaks Chinese." He said it like it still surprised him. I said, she speaks human. Mandarin is part of that." He looked at me wary, then nodded again. He said, "We hired her as a consultant." I asked if they paid well. He said yes. I asked if they hired her mother. He said, "What?" I said, You said you'd give her mother your job." He smiled, faint and ashamed. He said, You know I didn't mean that." I said, I know. Nia didn't need Harlan. The internship letter sat on their kitchen counter next to a bowl of oranges for 3 weeks. Then she called the number and negotiated. She brought a professor into the meeting. She asked for a clause about harassment and a clear reporting line. She asked for independence. They said yes to some of it. They hedged on others. She accepted, not because she owed them anything, but because she could use their resources to sharpen her tools. "I want to build bridges on purpose," she told me, "not as an emergency prop." On her first day at Harlan, she wore a navy blazer from a secondhand store and a white shirt with a collar that lay perfectly flat. She carried a tote bag with a small notebook and 2 pens. In the elevator, 2 men in suits discussed a timeline for a bid. They noticed her and smiled. They didn't ask if she was lost. She stepped out on the 25th floor and walked into a glass-walled conference room. On the table sat a pot of coffee, 2 plates of pastries, and a contract. Victor wasn't there. Danielle was. "Welcome," she said. "We're glad to have you." Nia nodded. "I'm here to do work, not to be your story." Danielle said, "Understood." In the weeks that followed, Nia worked on a project mapping the languages spoken by drivers in their gig fleet to better training materials. She pushed for safety instructions to be translated into Spanish, Mandarin, Bengali, Somali, and Haitian Creole. She sat in calls where she asked men to slow down. She sat with drivers in break rooms to listen. She created a small team. She got pushback from a manager who said, "We can just do English and Spanish, the rest will be fine." She said, "Based on our incident logs, that's not true." She showed him a chart with dates and languages and outcomes. He looked at it for a long time, then said, "Okay, maybe we can do more." A crack in the door is a door. At home, Monica started to notice something too. The men in suits in the hallways held doors. They said thank you with their eyes on her face. Not above her head, not all of them, enough to be a dent. "I don't need their apology every day," she told me. "I need my dignity every day." The union sent a letter to the hotel proposing a translation and language access program for staff trainings. The letter referenced data from Nia's project with her permission. "See," Monica said, "it circles." That summer, the hotel hosted another conference, a coalition of city planners with a focus on equitable transit. In a panel about how to engage communities, a speaker said, hire people from the community and not just as an afterthought. In the back of the room, a group of housekeepers cleaned up coffee, quietly, efficiently, like they always do. One of them, not Monica, looked at the speaker and smiled like she wanted to say, "Welcome to what we already know." After the talk, the organizers invited Nia to speak for 10 minutes about translation as dignity. She stood in front of a room that had not laughed first and said, "Language isn't extra. It's the arrangement of respect." People clapped. A man came up after and said he'd read about her on the internet. "I hope you learned something else," she said. He said he had. I asked Nia what she thought about that remark now, months later. We sat again at the library table, the fluorescent light still flickering. She said, I think about the moment my mouth opened. I think about my mother's name in his mouth like a toss away. I think about how quickly I could have stayed quiet, and I think about how Ms. Lin looked at me like I could hold something steady. I want to be that for someone else." She closed her notebook. "Also, I think about getting better at Chinese." She laughed, a real laugh. "It's a big language. There's always something new." I called Ms. Lin. She answered from a place that sounded like it had many windows. She said, "We have a new partner in another city. We told them, when you invite us, you plan for us, you provide language. You don't make jokes about the workers." I asked if she had a message for Nia. She said, "Apar. Zhenzheng de zunzhong bu shi yiju hua, shi xuanze." Real respect is not a sentence. It is a choice. Victor, when I last spoke with him, had started to avoid the topic in interviews. He preferred to talk about electric trucks and last-mile coordination. He once said on a panel, "We had a learning experience at my company regarding tone." A man in the audience asked, "Can you elaborate?" He said, "We decided to invest in language access." He did not mention his joke. He did not mention Monica. He did not mention the check. He did not mention the internship. He said, "We believe in meeting people where they are." Someone on social media subtitled the clip with, "He learned not to be a jerk." The internet has a way of flattening nuance. But in the hallways of the hotel, in the break rooms of the logistics depots, in the kitchen where Monica keeps oranges in a bowl, the nuance remained. One day, one sentence, one choice, and the echo that followed. I asked Monica if she forgave him. She said, What does that give me?" She smiled, soft. "I have my daughter. I have my back not bent." She went to work early the next day because a large wedding was scheduled and they needed extra hands. She showed a new hire how to fold a sheet perfectly with corners, like an envelope. She said, "Tuck, not stretch, it lasts longer that way." That is a kind of wisdom, too. As a reporter, I prefer the endings where policies change and numbers move, and you can point and say, "Here and here, we got some of that." The hotel's staff earned a pay raise of 75 cents an hour. Not enough, but not nothing. Harlan Logistics hired 2 full-time interpreters and contracted a language services company. They printed new training manuals with instructions in 5 languages. They posted an apology, a small constellation of things. But the part that stayed with me is smaller. A young woman whose mother's name was in the air like a toy, a room full of adults who laughed, a decision not to leave it, a sentence in Mandarin that bridged a gap, a new file on a company server labeled Language Access Strategy because a daughter was present when a mother was made into a punchline. At the end of one of our conversations, Nia looked at my recorder, small and black on the table, and said, can I say something for the record? I nodded. She said, it wasn't about Chinese. It was about who's allowed to be in the room and who's supposed to just clean it afterward. She paused. But also it was about Chinese. She laughed. You know what I mean. I said I did. She said, tell them. Tell them. Learn a word, learn a name, learn a way to say I see you. When the dust of a story like this settles, you look for the quote that holds it. This one perhaps, Ms. Lynn's line, real respect is a choice, or Monica's, I need my dignity every day, or Nia's, I don't like being dared, or Victor's, reconsidered, turned inside out, not as a promise on a stage, but as a quiet vow at a desk late at night. Do not make a joke where a bridge should be. If someone offers to build one, pay them well, and then learn to build it yourself. At the end of this film, you're imagining, if there were credits, I'd roll them over a shot of the hotel hallway outside Ballroom C, empty for a moment between sessions. You'd hear the ghost of a microphone pop, the shuffle of chairs, the hum of a projector. You'd see, for a second, the service door swing open and a young woman slip in, carrying a brown paper bag, moving like someone who has learned to make a room include her by force of kindness. And over it, her voice. What she said into her phone one nervous night to make herself smile. Like and subscribe for more stories that challenge prejudice and celebrate courage. Then the door would close, and the hallway would be quiet again, and you'd know that somewhere inside, someone like her was saying a word the room needed to hear, and someone like her mother was smoothing a wrinkle. None of the rest of us saw, and another day was starting where respect would be a choice again and again and again.